This is some of the water that's coming out of our dam that we made on Cold Stream. It's a little out of procedure. You'll see a little later on where this comes in effect. But you'll see the water flowing out of the dam now that pushes the pulpwood down into the Kennebec River. This you can see the wood going through, and you'll see us closing the dam in a minute. This is some of the wood coming down above the dam into the dam and down through it. This is the water running down into the dam. You'll notice shortly when we close the gates. You can see some of the ice coming down, going right through the dam. Now we close the gates. We'll let that build up in this dam, and then we'll have a head go down to drive the pulpwood down into the main river. This is the tugboat that towing the pulpwood across Wyman Lake. I think these most of these had about 5,000 to 6,000 cod in them. This is one of the old bulldozers we had that made the roads. In those years we would cut the wood, yard it with horses and with crawler tractors, and then we would bulldoze the truck road to the wood. This is a pile of logs that we had. They all get frozen together, and we have to loosen them up for the crane to load onto the trucks to take out to the main road. It shows them opening up the road to the wood, and you notice the amount of snow that we had back in those years. This old bulldozer did a lot of work for us back in those years on the woodlot. By mixing a lot of this snow and dirt together and then have it freezing, we could go into quite a rough country and take the wood out on trucks. This is some of the wood that we re-yarded from back on West Forks out towards the main highway on Route 201. It was mostly white birch that went to what we called then BFD, which is Burst Foster Dixfield, which later became Diamond Match. They wanted to haul it with trailers from West Forks to Oakland, and we re-yarded it out of our small woods roads out onto the main road where they could get it with trailers. They wanted it to be quite long, so they could haul a lot bigger load with their trailers, and all we had to yard out with was short wheelbase trucks. So I improvised a 11-foot bunk on the front and a 9-foot bunk on the back, and then we would run the logs right by the cab on both sides of the truck so that we could haul these long logs with a short truck. You can see there what I mean. We run them right by and would hold the front end of the truck down. This was a pile of pine logs that we had on Tom Higgins Stream. We added it down Tom Higgins Stream with horses, and then put it in a pile there and hauled it in the summertime. These are some trucks coming down the hill at Cold Stream. This was when we was in the process of building the dam that you saw the water running through before. This was quite a steep hill, and sometimes the trucks lacked power going up it or didn't have the traction. Here's one that didn't have enough power or something. We had to help him with a bulldozer. This is a shot of the wood that was re-added out onto the gravel road just as it leaves 201, Highway 201 on West Fox. These pictures actually come out pretty good for taking back in the 50s. These are some of the men that were working on the dam. They were just going into lunch. And these are the men coming out of the men's camp to go to the cookroom for lunch. It's Eugene Caron there, then the sweater that was my foreman. That's Henry Gay from Jackman, that was our clerk. My wife and I lived in this camp here, and then Jimmy McIntyre from Jackman was a scaler which was H&W, Hollingsworth and Whitney Company. This was our cookroom. This is a shot of the campsite. This is when they're eating in the cookroom. The light wasn't the best on it. But we had 3 hearty meals a day. Mornings we had bacon and eggs, ham and eggs, pancakes. Noon we had to have meat and potatoes, and night meat and potatoes. And there was always like 8 or 9 different kinds of desserts. This is one of the farm tractors that we had to yard some of the pulpwood. When we had a long ways to go with it, we'd bring it out of the woods with horses, and then we'd put it on these sleds behind the tractor and take it to the river. We'd also use horses. You note the ends of the wood are all cut smooth. It was all cut by bucksaw in those days, and then they was painted. The ends of the woods were painted so that they could tell when they went down the river whose wood they was. Sometime we'd top out on the main road with what we had along the main road going to either to Coldstream or the Kennebec River, and this is what we're doing here. It's all done by hand in those years. It was frozen, and we'd have to break it apart with an axe, load it with by hand with a pulp. Most of these sleds were sleds that we made ourselves, and the racks were 24 feet long, most of them. This is some wood that was sluiced into the Kennebec River. We had a rope across there, so if anybody did fall into the sluice, they'd be able to grab hold of the rope on the way by, hopefully. This is a little hill that we had coming down onto the sluice. You'll notice the hay that we had on it to help hold the loads back.
Can you shut that off?
This is one of our pair of horses we had yarding the wood to the sluice. We had around 15 pair in the woods that winter, besides the tractors. Load of wood would go along pretty nice with some snow and sled runners going on it. Could haul a pretty good load, quite a long ways with horses. This is a pair that's coming out of one of the side roads where they little rough. You can see how good the horses can handle something like this. They'll go slow and easy when it's rough. This is a sluice again into the Kennebec. The Kennebec didn't freeze all winter long, so we could dump the wood into it any time. This is a shot of down below the sluice of the wood flying through the air. We would come to this sluice with a load of wood, and then we'd put a stick of pulp under each runner, and it would most of the wood would come off all by itself right down the sluice. I guess you can see by this picture here, see that the horse, we stop the horses and then put the stick underneath and just a little push and it goes. Now this is a shot of another sluice down the river further. This sluice was about 1,000 feet long, and it was about 800 feet from the end of the sluice to the river. We had a little step on the end of the sluiceway, and it would throw the wood at 800 feet right into the river. If you notice, you probably can see a stick flying through the air once in a while. Then you can see where they land in the river. This is another sluice that we had, another spot going into the river. This was just a small one that we added with horses. Went down one stick to a time. we had to have something like this because it was too steep to get right down to the river, and we had to have some way of getting the wood from where we could take it with the horses to the river. Now, this is a sluice that we had on Cold Stream. Now, Cold Stream froze in the winter, so we'd have to sluice the wood into the river, and then when spring come around, we would drive it down the stream when the water come up. This is a landing that we had on the mouth of Tom Hegan Stream, where Tom Hegan runs into Cold Stream. We had around 7,000 cod in this landing in the winter. In a little while, you'll see where we had the water come from when they lifted the dam and let the water down through to take the wood down Cold Stream. Sometimes it'd be frozen pretty hard, and we'd put some sticks of dynamite on a stick of wood and put it in the water and let it go down under the wood and loosen it up where it was frozen. Now you can see the head is starting to come and the wood's starting to go. We would get what we could by hand and let it go down the stream with the head from the dam, and then we'd come behind it with bulldozers and push it into the stream. Sometimes it would jam up. We'd have to run down and loosen it, like you just see there. Time a stick of dynamite or two and break it loose again. You can see a big chunk of ice there that's pushed right up in the air. You can just imagine how strong that water was. Cold mixed with ice and the pulpwood. See some that's all frozen together going down. When it hit rocks, it would break loose. This is my mother here. You can see there too the little S's on the end of the wood painted in red. That was what we had to do so they could separate it from one company to another. We'd take some of it in by hand, and then what we could, where we could get a bunch of it going, then we'd come along with the bulldozers and push it in. Now there's, again, we're going to put a stick of dynamite underneath that was sticking out in frozen. Here's we're coming along with the bulldozer to push it out into the brook. This is one of our sluice ways that we had into the stream. You can see us lighting the dynamite, sticking it in the water to break it loose. This is one of our sluice ways we had in Cold Stream. That's my wife and I. That's how we used to get across the brook. She wasn't too steady, but she made it all right. We brought the bulldozer across the stream to help us on this pile of wood that we'd sluiced into the stream. These drives, you'd get cold and wet. Water was awful cold. You'd bound to get wet before the day was over. Noontime, we'd always have some tea that we'd make. We'd get some water out of the brook and put some tea in it, boil it, and then put a little cold water on top of it to settle the tea leaves, and it tasted awful good. The bulldozer would do quite a job pushing it out into the brook for us. This is taking the rear down Cold Stream. After we took the wood down, the biggest piles, then we'd have to go down and throw some in by hand. I use a pick pole and push it out into the water. Quite a lot of it we had to handle by hand. This is lifting the gate on the dam that we made at Cold Stream. That's me in the brown jacket, and then Eugene Caron, my foreman, on the other side. This is a shot taken up above the dam. Now this is some pine that we cut on 10,000 acre tract. There was some awful nice pine in there that we cut, yarded it with the bulldozers and brought it to our sawmill and sawed it. These are in the late 50s, middle and late 50s. The first years of using chainsaws. You can see the size of this one-man saw. They were big and heavy in those years. This is what we yarded the pine with, a little bulldozer with an arch behind it. And we would bring it out to our main road, then truck it to our sawmill and saw it. In these years, we had bonded men, the Canadians from Canada, that did most of the cutting for us. Most of them would stay right in our woods camps all winter long. Sometimes they would stay for 3 or 4 months at a time without going home. This is one of the, you can see how long these pine were, and sometimes going around a corner they'd bind. my brother came up from Auburn with his tractor and didn't have a winch on it, so he couldn't haul much of a load without a winch, so we devised using two tractors, one in front of the other, and this way we could haul more than double what we could with one tractor, so it worked out pretty good. There's the two tractors there going. This is one of our roads that we had just made, and sometimes they were pretty rough, and they would need a little help sometimes from a bulldozer to have the trucks come out with their load. Sometimes it's pretty rough on the trucks. This is a big international 10-wheeler that we bought. Hauled a lot of wood with it. This is one of the loads of pine coming out, going to our sawmill. Set of tongs that we'd used, and try to get them as near as you could to the middle of the log, and then the man on the truck would have to help the crane operator to put it down on his load. This is a shot of some of the pine logs that we cut in there. This was binding our load down when we get ready to go. We had one pine in there that we cut, was the biggest one that I ever did cut in over our years, and this is part of the pine tree. There was 5 16-foot logs in the tree. The butt log, I believe this is it right here. It measured, yes it is, it measured 54 inches on the butt. It was 5 16-foot logs that topped off at 16 inches. There was 3,110 feet in the tree. We loaded it all right, had about all that the crane wanted to handle. That's Pete LeClaire that was driving this truck. Here's a picture of him inside of that load of logs. We had over 6,000 feet on that truckload. This is a truck coming into the sawmill. We'd trip these loads and unload them by hand, roll them downhill, and then when we got more than what we could handle in a pile, we'd bring the crane out of the woods and pile them. Getting ready to trip the load now. This is Dan and Lady, a pair of pulling horses that we had that we used to yard the logs into the mill, and sometimes we'd have to pull a log down so we could get a hold of it. And that's Frank Hayden that's driving the pair of horses. This is another load that's coming into our sawmill yard. This is a load of lumber that are going out after we sawed it. We loaded it all by hand. This is a shot of the sawmill, sawing the pine. This is a shot of the sawmill after it comes to the big saw. It goes through the edger. Binding down is a load of lumber to go in the field and stick it. We'd stick it in the field, a lot of it, and some of it went out green, but a lot of it we'd stick like this in the field and air dry it. This is a shot of the pair of horses that we used to take the slabs and edgings away from the mill, and in those years we'd take them out and burn them. We used one pair of horses to bring the logs into the mill, one pair to take the slab and edgings away. This picture of Dave and Tig. They were a very good pulling team. This shot was taken in the springtime. It was quite muddy around there. This is a picture of when he took the wood off in 10,000 acre tract down onto Dead Stream Pond and put it on the ice in the wintertime, and then we drove it down the outlet of Dead Stream Pond into the river in the spring. We used these farm tractors because we had to yard it quite a long ways. This is how we smoothed up the roads with some sticks of wood behind the tractor and then let it freeze overnight. Sometimes we'd go through the ice a little, and this is one time where the tractor went through. We had to go get another tractor and pull him out. These were 32-foot racks that we used. This is a shot of the pulpwood on Dead Stream Pond. we put a boom around it and then drove it down built a dam on the outlet of the pond and drove it down into Kennebec River in the spring. This is a shot of our old snowplow we had plowing some snow then. The old snowplow wasn't miles per gallon, it was gallons per mile when you plowed snow like this. In those years we had a lot of snow to contend with. It's a shot of the wood in Deadstream Pond with a truckload of logs going out. Just when the farm tractor's coming down onto the pond. This is another pair of horses that we had for a pulling team too. That's Dick and Jim. These sleds would, when they're riding on snow, I don't know whether everybody knows it or not, but when you ride along on snow like that, they're riding actually on little bubbles of water. The snow, you melt the snow a little and it rides along on little bubbles of water, but the thing is that when you stop, they'll freeze, so it takes a pretty good snap to start them going. One driving this tractor is Valère Lognon, that he worked for me for a good many years. An awful good man. And you can see the pulpwood that was cut with buck saws and painted on the ends. We would cut it and put it in piles to be scaled in the woods, and then we would yard it when the snow come to either the river, the cold stream, or the Deadstream Pond, and then drive it into the Kennebec River when the water come up in the springtime. This is a picture of 3 little bears that the mother was killed, and we got them and then brought them into my place, and then my father took them down to his place in Auburn. These pictures were taken at his place in Auburn. Here he's feeding one of the little bear cubs with a bottle. This is my father. They were awful playful. My father had a Newfoundland dog that had puppies, and the puppies were about the same size as the bear cubs, and we put them into the pen together, and they got along fine. Now this is my mother, one of the bear cubs. There again, this was in the 50s, and this is 1992. So, from 40 years ago. If you're wondering what ever happened to these bear cubs, they went to, after they grew up a little bit too big to handle, went to Poland Springs. They kept them for I don't know how many years, and I know that of the three there was one female and two males, and they had some bear cubs while they were there at Poland Springs. This is a Newfoundland dog that had puppies. She just didn't know what to think of the bears at first. She says, yeah, I don't know, you put him on my bag, but I don't know as I like it. Yeah, there's two of the cubs together, and there's one of the puppies. There's two of the bear cubs. There's the three of them. There's one of the puppies right there. Wasn't much difference in their size. There's a puppy along with them. They were awful playful. Their claws were sharp too. My father had an apple orchard, and this is one of the apple boxes that they're standing on. There's one of the puppies along with the bear. I guess instinct, they just like to climb. Also kind of clumsy. Puppy don't know what to do with that. This is a little apple tree that they'd set out. Instinct, he got an instinct he wants to climb it. They just don't know quite what to do. They like to climb. This is my brother and a couple of the bears and one puppy. They get them claws up around your ears, and they were sharp. They like the bottle pretty well. This is one of my brother's sons. I think that's Ronnie. This is another one of his sons, Bruce. Whoop. This bulkhead going down the cellar was made of metal, a little slippery. They just love to romp around. I know they had a picture of them in the Lewiston Journal, and that weekend there was a lot of people come up to see them. I guess you don't want to eat the apple. You'd rather have milk. Now, this is some of the deer that were in our woods operation. That one winter we had over 100 deer in our pulpwood operation. Some of these roads that we had yarded the pulpwood down, I had my father sit on the hood of the Jeep. We rode around taking some pictures of the deer. They like to hang around into our operation because there's a lot of feed for them and good rows for them to run around in. This was in the 50s. In the 60s we had coyotes come in, and some of my operations in the 70s we'd have like 35 or 40 deer when I started the operation in the winter. When the spring come around, there'd only be 5 or 6 left. The rest of them are all killed with the coyotes. They're really alert. Don't take too much to spook them. I think some of these pictures were at the foot of Durgan Hill, where in the year we cleared the right-of-way going down for the new road going down Durgan Hill. Quite a few of them right there.